Some breaking news in the NFL this afternoon after Caleb Williams got sacked the league-high 68 times last year. New Bears head coach Ben Johnson doing something about it. Adam Schefter reporting they are sending a fourth-round pick to the Chiefs for all-pro guard Joe Thuney. The day before the Bears made a deal with the Rams for guard Jonah Jackson. So it is clear with Jackson and Thuney, they are trying to do something about this Bears offensive front that, to say the least, wasn't great. These two always are, Dan Graziano and Booger McFarland. And Graz, I want to start with you. Patrick Mahomes, he was sacked the most times in his career this past season. We thought maybe the Chiefs were going to address their offensive line issues this offseason, but they just dealt Thuney. What can you tell us about this decision?
Well, Matt, I think they do plan to address their offensive line situation this offseason, but one of the things they'd like to do there is to get younger and cheaper. They franchised their other guard, Trey Smith, so right now he's going to cost them about $23 million unless they can get a long-term deal done with him, which they hope to do. They've drafted some guys in recent drafts with high picks that they hope are ready for larger roles this year. Kingsley Suamataia, who played some left tackle for them last year, could be a candidate to replace Thuney at that guard spot. And I expect the Chiefs to have an aggressive offseason. I've been told they were embarrassed by their performance in the Super Bowl, and they want to make sure that they bolster the roster in key areas. So I think Thuney is not a guy they were just throwing away, but they reached a point, given his age and his salary, where they felt it would be better for the overall roster to find a different solution at that position.
Yeah, Boog, your thoughts on how they dealt with this?
Well, think about the word that Graz just used. They're hoping that Kingsley Suamataia is going to be a plug-and-play guy at guard. When you got Patrick Mahomes, who's in the prime of his career, I would not go into a season with 3 question marks, and right now they have 3 question marks on the offensive line. I think we can all agree Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are going to be rock solid. They're 2 of the top people at their positions in all of football. But you have the best quarterback in football, who the only time he's gotten to the Super Bowl and lost, he wasn't protected. And now your offensive line is missing basically 3 quality players. I just don't know if I'm Kansas City, I'm going to sleep well at night. I get it. We all trust Andy Reid and Brett Veach, but at some point, you got to get some good players on the field. And I wouldn't go into the season hoping that a guy can play.
Important to note, the season does not start next week, right? Like there's a lot of time for them to add more players and to coach up guys like Kingsley Suamataia. So they actually have a lot of faith in their offensive coaching staff to be able to get these guys where they need to go as well.
This just in the SportsCenter, the NFL season does not, in fact, start next week, which I think is a good thing for everyone, including those of us that want a vacation sometime soon.
Yeah, breaking news.
Graz, with the Bears' addition of Thuney, walk me through now some other priorities you believe they need to address in addition to that offensive line.
Yeah, I think that they'll need to bolster around Caleb Williams, probably at wide receiver. Doesn't sound like Keenan Allen is in the plans. He's a free agent. At running back, they'll need to add at running back, and they'll need to address the defense, especially up front. They'll need another edge rusher to go with Montez Sweat. Bears have a lot of cap room. I would expect them to continue to be active, especially adding on the defensive side of the ball. But with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, I think they feel like they have a strong 1-2 at wide receiver. Probably play around at tight end, running back, and add pieces. The offensive line was the key part of the offseason mission for Bears GM Ryan Poles.
Yeah, and Boog, make no mistake about it. This is all about Caleb Williams and trying to get him to take that next step in his second year. How did these moves, do you believe, help him going into the offseason?
Well, it's just like any quarterback. You want to feel protected. And I think when you look at Ben Johnson coming from Detroit, where their offensive line was absolutely outstanding, you couple that with what happened in the Super Bowl with Philadelphia and their offensive and defensive line, it's amazing where we're going right now. Is that this league, who we thought was going to go to this wide open league, we go back to how any team is built. You build a team front to back, inside out. And if you're Caleb Williams, you got to feel really good that you're going to be protected by some veteran offensive linemen. You got Darnell Wright at right tackle. You got Thuney. They traded for Jackson. They still need to make sure they get some veteran backups in there. But if you're Caleb Williams, you go to bed at night knowing that you can drop back in the pocket and you don't have to run for your life. And I think that's the number one thing as we look forward. Ben Johnson wants to make sure that Caleb feels protected. He was too erratic in the pocket last year. Sometimes he had to be because of that offensive line. Now he knows he's protected and he can work on the quarterback's fundamentals. This is a huge day for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and if they want to get his confidence up, it's all about confidence with the young player with his talent level in Chicago. You would think now, to your point, feeling more comfortable about what's in front of him. We had some more breaking news out of the NFL in Vegas. Adam Schefter reported that Raiders Pro Bowl defensive end has agreed to 3 years, $106.5 million. Maxx Crosby, including $91.5 million guaranteed. Crosby has 2 years left on his current deal, but he had no guaranteed money. Booger, your reaction to this money being thrown at Crosby and Raiders extending him?
Well, this makes me so happy because, number one, he plays the game the right way. He goes 100 miles an hour every play, regardless of what the score is on the scoreboard. Any young player, turn the tape on and watch Maxx Crosby play. That's how you play football. Number two, if you're the Raiders, this is smart because you know Michael Parsons is going to want the same deal to be the highest paid non-quarterbaip. You know that Myles Garrett is going to want the same deal. So if you're the Raiders, go ahead and establish that precedent. Give Maxx Crosby his flowers right now. Make him the highest paid non-quarterback. And understand, it's going to get surpassed in the next month or so by Myles Garrett and by Michael Parsons. But at least you gave this man what he deserved and gave him his flowers. This deal makes me so happy, guys.
Yeah, because he could say right now, they could say, look, you're the highest non-paid quarterback in NFL history. As of today, and to your point, as of this time next week, it's like, well, I mean, you had the title for 7 days. Gentlemen, great stuff. Back with you both in a little bit.
We're just getting started on SportsCenter. After being jettisoned in New York, which teams could be?
Christine and Matt back with you. Breaking news in the NFL. Our Adam Schefter's reporting. Seahawks Pro Bowl receiver DK Metcalf has requested a trade after 2 weeks of discussions with the team. He's averaged over 1,000 receiving yards in his 6 seasons in Seattle. Seahawks also releasing Tyler Lockett. This all ahead of the new league year, which begins next week on March 12th as we bring back our NFL insider Dan Graziano. All right, so what more can you tell us about Metcalf requesting this trade?
DK Metcalf at age 27 is scheduled to make $18 million this year in the final year of his contract with Seattle. That's about half as much as Justin Jefferson makes at the very top of the wide receiver market, and understandably, DK Metcalf believes he should be paid more. So conversations with the team over the last couple of weeks have not yielded results in terms of the contract extension he is looking for. So the trade request means that he would like to be allowed to talk to other teams about what the contract would be if he got traded there. We'll see what happens. It's still possible Seattle could end up fixing this with a contract extension along the lines of what DK Metcalf wants. But if not, he becomes an extremely intriguing addition to the wide receiver market that's already lost T. Higgins to a franchise tag and doesn't have a whole lot else on it in terms of guys DK Metcalf's age and ability.
And as you know, as we near towards the draft, maybe that draft capital plus with free agency starting might get a team that spend a little more than they otherwise wouldn't because they're in need of a top flight receiver. Speaking of top flight, the Jets announced Tuesday that they are releasing Davante Adams, another receiver about to be on the market. So what is the market for Adams and his prospects right now?
Adams, I think, will have a market. He's an older receiver that probably, is going to slot in as somebody's number 2 at this point in his career. Could be an interesting addition for his former team, the Green Bay Packers, who have a young wide receiver group and want to add a veteran this offseason to that room. But I think there'll be a lot of teams that will be looking at Davante Adams. This is kind of what the receiver market is right now with Higgins franchised, with it sounds like the Buccaneers might be likely to keep Chris Godwin. So you have some older guys that are proven, maybe not what they once were, guys like Davante Adams, a Christian Kirk, a Tyler Lockett, et cetera, who are going to hit the market and try and find roles on other teams, kind of get their third contracts, fourth contracts in some cases, and maybe just kind of be a helpful addition to a wide receiver room as opposed to a star number 1. Yeah,
not be the guy, supplement a roster that's already has some talent. You certainly would be a great number 2 if he was to be in that situation at all. Some news from our Todd Archer. The Cowboys have restructured Dak Prescott's contract to save $36 million against the cap. We know Jerry Jones knows that they have some money, and he actually spoke about that and what their strategy will be in free agency. That is new on SportsCenter.
I don't think aggressive is the right word. I wouldn't call us really void in any area, void if you include what we're going to do in the draft. I wouldn't see that. So as your question is addressing free agency, I'm not looking at free agency as a place to fill voids.
You can spend bad money in free agency. I mean, Cowboys know that very well. So the Dak news today, CD's restructuring yesterday, elevated salary cap. Yeah. There's a lot of money in Jarrett's checkbook. So where do you believe the Cowboys go now in reloading this offseason and adding maybe another wide receiver, just getting a better roster in general?
Yeah, they're looking for a number 2 wide receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks did not turn out to be that. So they'll look around and see what that market holds. We were just talking about some of the veteran names on it, and the Cowboys, I'm sure, will explore all those kinds of options. They re-signed their defensive tackle, Osa Odigizua. Now they'll turn their attention defensively to try and bring back cornerback Jordan Lewis, who's also a free agent. If they don't get him back, and maybe even if they do, they'll need to add pieces in their defensive secondary. They'll be looking for linebacker help. They still have some injury issues that they'll start the season with there. The Cowboys need a running back. They like what Rico Dowdle did for him end of last year, but they want a sort of a dynamic playmaker to pair with him. And Zach Martin retired today, which is a reminder that the Cowboys are never afraid to spend high-end resources on the offensive line, so don't be surprised if they continue to pay attention to that. Cowboys have a lot of work to do, but the CD and Dak restructures free up a ton of cap room to allow them to do that.
And I would say from the Dallas Cowboys perspective, of everyone watching, they know they've got the money to spend. How wise can they be in the upcoming draft that address some of those needs with rookie contract prices? That's our Dan Graziano with the latest on all things. And
agency, the biggest name that we've had our eye on is quarterback Sam Darnold, as we welcome back Dan Graziano and Booger McFarland. All right, Graz, I'm going to start with you. The Vikings, they elected not to place the franchise tag on Darnold. What more can you tell us about where negotiations stands between Darnold and the Vikings?
Well, they're not dead, which is a good thing for Sam Darnold and the Vikings. They would have Sam Darnold back, but it would have to be the right kind of deal for the Vikings, as in not too costly or too lengthy so as to stand in the way of J.J. McCarthy once he is ready to take over. J.J. McCarthy, a top 10 pick in last year's draft. The Vikings still believe he's their quarterback of the future, and they want him to be able to hop in there and take over as soon as he's ready. So if Sam Darnold finds the deal of his dreams on the free agent market, and that's beyond what the Vikings want to spend, then he likely heads out. But if he comes back to them and said that deal wasn't out there, I'm willing to talk about your deal, then it is possible he could still be back there.
All right, Booger, knowing that the future is J.J. McCarthy, do you think it's a smart